Good morning and welcome to the Tom Brokaw News Center here at Universal City. I'm Conan Nolan. So don't call it Election Day. It's actually the end of the election. We've been voting for weeks. And if your ballot is still on the table, the recall ballot, remember that this is the simplest government form you will ever get in the mail. There are just two questions. Question number one, do you want to fire the governor? Yes, no. And question number two, if you do want to fire the governor, and even if you don't, but you think most people do want to fire him, who would you hire in his place? Now, polls indicate that Governor Gavin Newsom could essentially beat back this by a very large figure. That's the most recent one. We'll have more on that in a moment from the University of California, Berkeley. But first, we check in with two leading professionals in politics. They ran presidential campaigns, Bob Shrum and Mike Murphy, the co-directors of the Center for the Political Future at the University of Southern California. So, gentlemen, thanks very much for taking the time. Mike, first to you. Listen, listening to Gavin Newsom during his stump speeches over the past few weeks, he's said the following: we were able to beat Trump in 2020, but we weren't able to beat Trumpism, and that's what this election is about. How important was it for the governor to get an opponent, ostensibly on the second ballot, a front runner who was a pro-Trump Republican talk show host in Larry Elder?
Well, it's the whole ball game, excuse me, for Gavin, because in an overwhelmingly blue state, if he can make the election not about a referendum on his failures, but on the specter and threat of a Donald Trump-style governor in California, he's winning. The more he can make it partisanized, particularly around Trump, who's, anthrax in California, that's the best strategy for him to keep the focus off himself and on to pure partisanship.
Bob, I saw that Amy Klobuchar, the moderate senator from Minnesota, offered her services to help with the campaign. But it was the campaign, the Newsom campaign, they cut commercials with Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Obviously, they are trying to get progressives to get excited about this. It appears that they've succeeded in that.
Oh, sure. And look, you've also had Kamala Harris out here campaigning. Joe Biden's coming. You have a very effective commercial from Barack Obama. I agree with Mike, by the way. Elder put a face on the recall. And every day Newsom campaigned against him. And in effect, every day Elder campaigned against himself. I almost thought he was having a conference call with the governor every morning. And Newsom was advising Elder on what to say because he seems so out of step with California.
Right. As soon as he talked about appointing somebody to take Dianne Feinstein's place and throwing the Senate to Mitch McConnell, that pretty much was written by the Newsom campaign. But Bob, on that point, though, in the law of unintended consequences, does the progressive wing of the Democratic Party in California now tell the governor, assuming he does win this recall, that, listen, you owe us in ways that you might not have thought the last time?
Well, people say that all the time. What really happened here was the party united, whether, from Biden to Sanders, all the way across the spectrum to Barack Obama. I think Newsom will just continue to be a progressive mainstream Democrat. And I kind of disagree with Mike on one thing. I don't think he has a record of failure. I think he's done an extraordinary job on COVID. And he was able to run against Ron DeSantis, too, the governor of Florida, who's done a horrible job on COVID.
So, Mike, let's just, and I know I'm driving the pro-recall people nuts with this questioning, and I apologize. But again, to believe the surveys, and they're pretty good surveys, if Gavin Newsom wins with 60% of the vote, similar to what he got in 2018.
Yeah, he's had a lot of stumbles and many of them self-inflicted. But as Bob kind of said, he's found somebody even he can beat, which is Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis in this overwhelmingly blue state. If he does win it, if it's close, then the kind of Sacramento, commentary will be, oh, my goodness, shouldn't have been that close in such an overwhelmingly Democratic state. By the way, since the 2003 recall, which I worked on for Arnold, the number of registered Republicans in California is only up about 20,000. The number of registered Democrats is up nearly 4 million. So it's even a bluer state now than before. But as you say, if he wins this, he can say, oh, I slew the red dragon, and he'll have a restart. And he is a politician who could use a restart. Now, I think the progressives have already won in California. Can he go more to the center and get a little more appeal? And if he can do that and then win probably a very easy reelection in a year, he could actually be a credible, interesting face in Democratic presidential politics. It would be quite a turnaround. And what's good for him is the turnaround is kind of already built in. Hard for him to lose the recall, hard for him to lose the re-election, because in this state, a box of hammers painted blue can win.
Right. And Mike, is there a sense that there's a Jerry Brown wing of the Democratic Party that does not align itself with the defund police movement, that actually doesn't mind vetoing a gun bill every now and then? But they don't feel completely at home with this party, but at the same time they're crazies on the other side, that they feel like they're the part of a party that is not thinking about them much, and they don't know where to go.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, if you could run kind of a centrist hybrid candidate who did not surrender to the loony left side of the Democratic Party, but could run right in the middle, you could have a competitive candidate like that. You know, on paper, Kevin Falconer, the former mayor of San Diego, who's running in the recall and is, I think, by far the strongest candidate, but he hasn't got out of the starting blocks. So it's kind of doomed from the beginning. But you could. The problem the Republicans have is there'll always be a flamethrower conservative over on the right, squeezing them, just like the left can squeeze the Democrat. But since there's so many more Democrats than Republicans, it's not really a fair fight. But yeah, there are some orphan Democrats who don't like the anti-business, super woke, almost socialist vibe coming out of the far left of the Democratic Party. And that vote could be up for grabs if you could ever find a candidate to get through the process. And
Bob, finally, last question. What would you advise Gavin Newsom to do? Again, assuming he wins easily on Tuesday, does he come out? Is he contrite at all? I've made a few mistakes. There's that EDD thing. And of course, I'm never going to Napa Valley for a dinner. Or does he just ignore that and just say onward and it's all about COVID?
Well, look, he'll get asked a question and he's going to have to say, obviously, I made a couple of mistakes and I'm sorry about that, but there were really big issues at stake here. How are we going to get COVID under control? How are we going to make sure that this economy booms? How is California going to continue to be a kind of leading force in the country? And I think he'll take a whack at Trump and at the folks who he sees as having been behind this recall. I mean, I don't know what the Republican Party thinks they're doing right now. A lot of the leaders of the party on masks and vaccines. I mean, there was a swing state poll of vaccine mandates by employers that showed 61 to 68% of people, depending on which state you were in, favored them. Larry Elder campaigned against them. I mean, so I think Newsom will come out. I think he'll be gracious. I think when he gets asked, he'll say, sure, I made some mistakes. But he's going to really focus on COVID and the economy.
Bob Shrum and Mike Murphy, co-directors of the Center for the Political Future at the University of Southern California. You're always the best. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, Conan.
Thank you.